Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton. I'm joined by CJ Vogel of On Texas Football. CJ's there right next to the tower, reporting from campus today. CJ, thanks for joining us. The University of Texas football team had practice this morning. They sent three different players to the podium after practice to visit with media reporters. CJ Vogel was there talking to each of them. We have some snippets of that here in this report. We also want to talk a little bit about what was said during those things. CJ, first of all, overall tenor, in your opinion, of the three players that came, and they were Manny Muhammad, Hayden Conner, as well as Vernon Broughton. What was the overall tenor between those guys?
I got the sense that these boys are ready. We've built it up a good bit since spring ball, right? And now that we're inching closer, we got some All-Americans released today. We've had the AP poll out for about a week and a half now. But get to hear from three guys who we normally don't get to hear from a whole lot. They spoke very highly about the process and what Steve Sarkisian calls as the standard, Bobby. And to me, that was really impressive. Just the way that they talked about how, it's the discipline, even in the offseason, that when, it's not a team scheduled event, they've got to be ready. And when it is team scheduled, like practice right now, there's a certain level in which that they're expected to perform to. And right now, that's being upheld by these three guys who are considered leaders on each side of the ball, respectively.
They all talked about the standard, particularly Manny and Hayden, I thought, talked about the standard at Texas. Let's talk a little bit about Manny Muhammad here. He was one of the first that talked today. And you asked him, CJ, in particular about the pass rush and how it might affect his ability to be a better defensive back. Here's what he had to say. Matthew, our producer, please roll tape on that.
Yeah, with the guys we brought in, like Trey Moore and Colin Simmons, we got Barron, we got Ethan Burke, Binkley. Those guys have been doing a great job getting to the football. And I actually have felt that in these past scrimmages.
Yeah, he was asking whether or not he felt like the pass rush was getting home a little bit quicker. Sounds like it is, CJ. What do you think about that comment from Manny, and do you think it's indicative of what might be an improved pass rush for the Longhorns in 2024?
Yeah, I think that's a cornerback's dream, right? Hey, I don't have to cover this guy as often or as long as I am used to in years past. And I think a year ago when you talk about that Texas defensive line, it was obviously the two interior guys that got all the notoriety and the hoopla and all that. But now you're starting to hear about the edges, and specifically a Trey Moore and a Colin Simmons, who Manny both mentioned there. Those are going to be the guys that help alleviate some of that pressure to stay so tight in coverage as often and as long as Texas at times in 2023 was asked to do for their cornerbacks. So to hear that from Manny Muhammad, who, Bobby, we've heard for two practices now, pressure is constant with this edge room. And so to hear that that's been something that they've noticed as well, it also allowed them to be a little bit more opportunistic, as we've heard after the first scrimmage as well. So great to hear that complementary aspect of the secondary and the pass rush are benefiting one another. And, it's one of those big turning points that Texas is going to need to have show up and be evident on the field from 2023 to 2024 for that defense to take its next jump.
Got to mention this. Manny was also very complimentary, I thought, on his comments of Gavin Holmes, the defensive back transfer, 2 years now transfer from Wake Forest, where he started for the Demon Deacons, did not start a year ago, but it sounds like he may be turning the corner and maybe getting relied upon more heavily in this defensive system in 2024.
Yeah, he called him a dog, and I think there's no better way to describe a cornerback than someone that's going to go out there and fight till the very end, right? Gavin Holmes, a guy that we saw sparingly at times in 2023, not as often as maybe as you thought coming into the season, especially after how Manny Muhammad took over one of those cornerback jobs and really made his presence felt there. But Gavin Holmes has had a tremendous fall camp, Bobby, maybe surprising to some folks who have attended practice. Some guys that we have talked to behind the scenes as well have all kind of said Gavin Holmes, really has a stranglehold on that opposite cornerback spot, away from Manny Muhammad. Of course, Jahdae Barron will be a guy that sees time, Javion Cole, and a trio of freshmen. So we'll see that rotation still. But right now, it sounds like Gavin Holmes is having a really impressive fall camp.
Yeah, it does. He also mentioned Javion Cole. The other thing that Manny talked about was comparing himself a little bit to Jahdae Barron and what similarities they have. Explain that to folks, how Muhammad and Barron may have a couple of similarities.
Yeah, both players are very cerebral, right? We've talked about it with Manny in the past. This is a guy that's basically only played cornerback since his 7th grade year. And in similarity to Jahdae Barron, this is a guy who understands the game of football probably as well as anybody on the field, right? He's a guy that's been likened to be a defensive coordinator when his days playing football are up. Their intellect on the field is very important, especially when they're moved around that defense and that secondary, as much as it's been talked about right now, right? With Jahdae Barron having time at nickel, moving out to outside corner as well. For them to watch film together, Manny Muhammad said that's something that they do often. They share notes, they collaborate with one another. Again, to have cerebral football players on the field, Bobby, you can never have enough of them. And another thing on top of that is when Texas does move Jahdae out to the cornerback spot, Manny Muhammad said that it's Jalen Gilbo who's making a heck of a fall camp right now, and they have a lot of confidence in him at the nickel spot.
Very, very interesting. I go back to this with Manny Muhammad. You talk about cerebral. We were told that he asked for footage from the previous year's first day of practice just so he could see what he would be going through this first year of practice, the first day. If you think that the film study doesn't matter to someone like that, I don't know what else to tell you, but apparently he and Jahdae Barron have some similarities there. All right, let's talk offensive line. Hayden Conner, 3-year starter for the University of Texas, heading into this year, expected to start again this year at left guard, one of the team captains, or not captains, but one of the team leaders. He was asked about the Joe Moore Award for the best offensive line, and I thought it was a unique answer he gave, CJ, and what he talked about, and that's that offensive line and what they do for it each and every day that reminds them of what they need to do to accomplish that.
Yeah, he says there's a list of requirements that each Joe Moore Award team has had in their winning season of the coveted award for the best offensive line in all of college football. He says they've got a plaque or a poster somewhere in the locker room, and before every single practice, Hayden Conner and the rest of the offensive line, they'll give it a little pat before they go out, and basically to remind each other of what, the expectation and the standard that they need to play at to win that award. It's been a topic of conversation this offseason. Obviously, Texas fans think that they have enough talent and depth right now to be in conversation for that award at the end of the year, and they're certainly making it a priority to go out and play like the best offensive line in the country right now in fall camp. And of course, come August 31st, Bobby, it's going to be exciting to see that group of offensive linemen in action against someone that's not in burnt orange and white.
You mentioned depth. You asked Hayden Conner in particular. This is your response, the response to your question, and asking Hayden Conner particularly about the depth at guard, center guard, and what's going on there. Matt, our producer, please play that.
Anything could happen. Someone has to be ready to play, and we're not going to miss a beat if someone has to come in who hasn't necessarily played as much. But we're deep, we're really talented, and we're going to be ready.
Yeah, he came off very confident, I thought, today, CJ, in what the offensive line was going to do. Also said he's been working some at center, which we reported in the spring scrimmage, the second scrimmage, of fall camp. Hayden Conner ran first-team center right out of the gate with Jake Majors sideline because of the boot. What are you hearing behind the scenes about some of the rotational aspects of the guard spot right now as well, not just what you heard from Hayden Conner today?
Yeah, I know that during the practice session this morning, Bobby, in which Texas was back on the field Tuesday morning, it was Nato Unozulu who got the right guard snaps out, taking that spot from DJ Campbell. Of course, there's been kind of a revolving door with that guard spot with four really talented players that Texas has with Cole Hudson, obviously Hayden Conner, DJ, and Nato. They've plugged and played in and kind of made those rotations throughout each of the first two scrimmages as well. Today, I'm told during the final, drive of the offense versus the defense in that team period towards the end of practice, it was Nato at right guard and it was Hayden Conner at left. I know that Cole Hudson, of course, had some run at right guard earlier in the scrimmages on Saturday as well. So to see these guys continually push one another and have those time slots for each other in certain situations or drives or possessions. It again speaks to the depth and the talent in that room right now. And I imagine we see all 4 of these guys very early and often in the 2024 season.
I look at it and ask you this, CJ. The last person that they allowed you guys to speak with was Vernon Broughton. The question was, he got married in the off season. He had a funny answer to your question. Matt, please play that for the folks at home.
Married in the spring?
Yes, I did.
Is that why you weren't in the spring game?
Yes, I did. I got married in Dallas, Texas to my beautiful wife, Camille Broughton, which I love dearly, but yes.
Talk about what kind of went into that decision. I know that was kind of one of the big talking points around then.
Yeah, so,
congratulations.
Appreciate it. Before spring, I was planning to get married to my beautiful wife, Camille, after the spring game, but 2 months in advance before they announced the spring game, we didn't obviously I didn't know, but we was planning on to have the wedding after the spring game. Yeah, but yeah, so which is crazy. But
that was a business decision. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, she's gonna keep my butt up if I went to that spring game. So yeah,
you already know.
Exactly.
Good stuff there. Having been married, CJ, you haven't done this before.
Nope.
But you don't mess with your wife's plans on wedding days. I'll just be real blunt and straightforward on that. Vernon Broughton also had something to say a little bit about Kenny Baker and his new coach. Share that with folks if you don't mind.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting answer, and I'm glad the question was asked. It was a great question. Vernon, who's been tutored by Bo Davis all throughout his career at Texas until this year, obviously when Kenny Baker was hired, said that there's been a more technical aspect and approach with Kenny Baker and his defensive line staff here at Texas than what he saw previously with Bo Davis. And what does that mean specifically, Bobby? Well, he gave us a pretty detailed answer, right? He went into detail that when I am, offset to the left of my 3-tech guard position and I step with my right foot versus my left, well, that's a coaching aspect that I wasn't previously receiving, making sure that my hands still remain in the center of the guard's body, that I'm squared up with the line of scrimmage, and just making sure that every little move that I make in the interior of that defensive line remains technically sound. He said maybe that wasn't something that was a big point of emphasis beforehand, but that he's receiving now and certainly has shown much improvement from the spring to the summer to the fall as a result of Kenny Baker's addition in his own game. He says Alfred Collins, again, is another guy who's reaped the rewards and the benefits of having this extra tutelage by Kenny Baker. So a bit more technical in the approach there has been helping the 2 of those defensive linemen. And again, a great question or a great answer to a question I think a lot of Texas fans are wondering is what's going to be the difference that Texas fans see on the field from a Kenny Baker coached offensive or defensive line versus a Bo Davis defensive line, which again produced some really talented players.
He was also asked about Alfred Collins and what he sees different maybe this year from a year ago with Alfred Collins. His response?
Well, a lot of consistency. And I think that's been a common theme between the 2 of them, really, right? We heard Steve Sarkisian talk about it on Monday, Bobby. It was, you've seen Moro Ojimo and Keandre Coburn in 2022. In 2023, it was Tavondre Sweat, and it was Byron Murphy. And now, obviously, with Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins expected to be that elder statesman duo in the room, they're guys now expecting to make that next jump and play to the level in which we've seen under the previous 2 duos who are both the upperclassmen right now. And so consistency is the key for Alfred Collins. It's the key for Vernon Broughton. And right now, based off the conversations that we've heard from Steve Sarkisian and Vernon Broughton, that's been showing up so far in fall camp.
Any of these guys give you any hints on the depth chart? I heard Hayden Conner say no. You'll have to ask the coaches for the depth chart. But what did you glean from Manny Muhammad's comments about the secondary? Because obviously Jalen Gilbo has been working with the ones at nickel. Jahdae Barron's been working at corner and nickel. Gavin Holmes, you said it sounded like he was maybe the starter. That's kind of what I'd heard at one corner. So what did you glean from Manny Muhammad and the starting secondary, or is it going to be heavy rotation?
I kind of lean more towards the rotation. I'm sure that they have an idea behind the scenes of who their top end guys are going to be on a game-winning drive situation or a goal line package, whatever it might be. I look at it more kind of like a pendulum, right? Moving from nickel, Jade in the middle, and then your two cornerback spots. And whether or not you want to have Jade on the field at nickel, well, they're your two cornerbacks. If not, Jade's bumped out to nickel, and you instead bump in Jalen Gilbo to that nickel spot as well. So that's kind of how my mind's seeing it right now. Of course, you'll still see a Javion Cole and a Warren Roberson, who we heard today from Manny Muhammad is a guy who's taken tremendous improvements from the spring into the fall. So to hear his name brought up as well, really encouraging. And I'll be interested, Bobby, right now. I know that we're still 11 days away from kickoff, but what kind of rotation do Santana Wilson and a Kobe Black kind of, etch out for themselves? Manny spoke about both, said that they're both a little bit more physical than he thought originally, which is exactly what you'd like to hear at the cornerback spot. But right now, again, I kind of think those four that I mentioned previously are going to be your three guys that you see on the field for those key situations early on in the season.
All right. Thanks, CJ, for that report from campus there in Austin, Texas. CJ, I appreciate you, bud. Thanks to Hayden Conner and Malik Muhammad, as well as Vernon Broughton. Congratulations, Vernon, for getting married. Now we know why your wife wouldn't let you do it any other way and miss the spring game. For CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. Thanks also to our producer, Matt Hutchison. Hook 'em.